All right, we're live. I see the link, so I'm gonna
Okay.
start recording and all right, we should be good to go, Deanne, if you want to take it over.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I hope everyone had a nice holiday. I don't know if it felt any different than every other day this year since nobody could travel, but I'm glad you're all here. And I just want to call us to order. And I'm going to ask Waylon to do a roll call, if you would, if you'll answer by saying here, please.
Most certainly, and for the record, just make sure we call to order at 10:35 a.m. on January 29th. So no problem there, Deanne. So if you hear your name, just say present. Please keep in mind we try to keep the screen on and hear your voices. We don't have a chat feature, so it's just good to see everyone and hear your voices today. All right, Jennifer Alexander.
Here.
Thank you. Robert Bazooka. Rhett Calvert. Leanne Godinez.
Here.
Jennifer Hines.
Here.
Deanne Lechenberger.
Here.
Linda Litzinger.
Here.
Ashley Ford.
Here.
Jana McLean. Susan Maraska.
Here.
Christine Price. DJ Puente.
Here.
Okay.
Here.
Christine Price is here. Yeah.
All right,
sorry.
thank you. Thank you, DJ. I got you. Jolene Sanders.
Here.
Amy Sharp. Bess Stalvey.
Here.
Agatha Thibodeau.
Here.
Dalen Zane.
Tracy Glass filling in for Daloon Zhang.
All right, thank you, Tracy. And I believe Nina is here for Amy.
Yeah, that's correct. Subbing for Amy Sharp.
All right, thank you. And any other visitors joining us today? And
Am I supposed to say here? I'm here.
yeah, say your name.
Jeanette.
And Jeanette, I'm here.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And you're representing Lone Star College. Okay.
That's correct, yes.
Like that program. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. We're good to go, Deanne, and we have quorum.
Okay, great. Approval of minutes is what you have on the next agenda item. And I don't have those pulled up, but does everybody else have them?
We don't have to pull them up. It's just if everybody should have received the email with that information. And if they don't, I mean, you can ask if there's any comments or any
comments or suggestions. Hearing none, I'll approve the minutes from last meeting. Say aye. Opposed? Hearing neither. I assume they're approved.
Aye.
All right. Good. Thank you. I'd like to introduce Ann Jeanette, who has been at least around me for a couple of years with Think Tank and everything. I grew up in Houston, but had never heard of Lone Star College, but she's definitely an advocate for that community college system. And they've had a lot going on. And in fact, I think y'all could do a better job distributing the vaccine if given the opportunity, because y'all really get on the ball. So what I'm going to ask her to do is to share the programs they have that fall under programs for individuals with intellectual and/or developmental disabilities, in addition to what Student Disability Services provide. And then I'm also going to ask her to speak briefly about the legislation that they promoted and were able to get passed and how that's impacted their campus programs. So without further ado, Ann, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. And Deanne, I didn't ask how long you wanted me. I could talk for like an hour straight and not even take a breath. So I put boundaries on me. I think you're muted, Deanne. I can't hear.
Okay, I think you can go to 11. That gives you 20 minutes.
Oh, that's
And
perfect. Okay.
if people have questions, we may extend that a little bit, but go ahead.
Okay. So thank you, Deanne, for inviting me. It's been great. I got to meet her at Texas Tech when Lone Star College was starting their program, our program called Life Path. For students with executive functioning disabilities is how we tend to call it. Of course, Lone Star College has disability services and reaches and serves our students with disabilities through accommodations like all colleges and universities. But the chancellor had wanted to do something more. And a group of us had specifically talked about the increasing number of students with autism choosing to attend college and universities, and how it was projected that those numbers were going to just increase really astronomically over the next 10 years or so when we were having the conversation. So at first we replicated a program, and then we parted ways with that replicated program after a year and developed Life Path. And the basic idea is that students spend 2 years, and I kind of think of it, I explain it often as they spend 2 years in the college environment with kind of a longer runway, just a longer period of time to get ready and adjust to this new environment where things are expected of them that weren't expected in the K through 12 world. So we teach them during those 2 years. They have classes, of course, but in the classes, our focus is really to help them become able to advocate for their needs, recognize their needs, know where to go to find the services on campuses, those kinds of things, but to do it experientially. We do that in higher ed all the time with meetings and tours of the building and that sort of thing. But we knew that our population needed a more experiential and a period of time immersed in the environment. And so that first 2 years, as the students take courses like, they take the first year foundations course, and they take business computer applications and business composition class, and they take a lot of different classes. But really, I compare it often to when we play Candyland with our kids or our grandkids when they're little. I always kind of use this analogy that I say, why do we play Candyland? And it really isn't, if you think about the goal of Candyland, it isn't to get to the end of the board and have a winner and all the people who don't win. You could think of the hard skills. The hard skills are, that maybe students are learning to count and to recognize their colors and maybe which way is, going up or down or that sort of thing. That's kind of the hard skills. But on the soft skill side, they're learning how to take turns and how to lose graciously and how to manage their frustration and their irritation and that sort of thing. So the first 2 years of Life Path are really, it's like Candyland. They have a lot of great classes, and they are learning good, hard skills that they need in the college environment. But some of our students come with those skills already pretty much intact. And that's when we have the conversations about what they're really learning. And the most important part is this immersive time. After 2 years, it is a 4-year program, even though we're at a community college, a 2-year college. It's a 4-year program. But at year 2, students have a decision to make. And that is, are they going to finish the last 4 years, two of the 4 years, or do they want to step off of the Life Path, the OLSA degree, and I'll talk to you about the OLSA degree in a minute, and do they want to step off of that degree that they earned by completing Life Path and actually pursue something, a different traditional kind of degree? And of course, they're not just suddenly making that decision at year 2. We have a number of career classes, and we use the Berkman assessment, and we do a lot of exploring and reality checking as far as what degrees and what environments are like in certain careers and that sort of thing. And then but we're about 25% of our students are choosing to step out of the life path classes and enter into alternate degrees. I'll tell you that we just had our first student transfer to Texas Tech in the fall of 20. We were super excited about his choice. We thought that was great. We have another one of our students that stepped off into Associate of Science and Computer Science. He was inducted into Phi Theta Kappa just in the fall semester. We've had others. So we have a student that graduated from Sam Houston with his bachelor's degree and is starting in a master's. So that 25% tends to be our students with executive functioning disabilities who have learned to manage those skills, put strategies in place, and they're ready to pursue higher education. And the other 75% finished the OLSA, hypothetically, because we're just at that point right now in our program. And I'll tell you why in a minute with the OLSA degree, but they stay and finish that degree and during their internship start transitioning to the workforce in an area that interests them. And I'll kind of back up and talk to you about the OLSA. So the OLSA degree is the legislation piece, the result of the legislation piece that Deanne was mentioning. We're the Life Path program on our campus, but the degree we offer is the OLSA degree, and that's just as of fall of 2020. We attempted to seek accreditation earlier, before we were even Life Path, during that first year of replication, and just found that Life Path was different enough. It didn't have the core curriculum that's typical in a college program. And so there was just some question marks about how that would fit into an AA or AS or anything like that. Dr. Nutt and our Chancellor Steve Head did a lot of work with Higher Education Coordinating Board folks that if I weren't presenting right now, I would remember their names. But and eventually realized that it was probably going to take legislative action to create a new degree that had different requirements. So that new degree, that new piece of legislation was introduced by Tom Oliverson 2 years ago. And it was a degree, it basically created a new degree, the Occupational and Life Skills Associate's degree. And that degree allowed us to create our own core curriculum and identify which courses belonged to our core and which were part of what is called our specialization area. And so at Lone Star, which right now we're the only people who can offer this degree, and I'll talk more about that in a second. At Lone Star, our specialization is the business operations certificate. So our specialization hours are those. Partly we liked the classes. There's classes like problem solving and decision making and some really great classes, but it also helps students look at various perspectives. The perspective of a manager, the perspective of people who are running big projects and they're a piece of the project and that sort of thing. But that's our specialization. So the OLSA degree, it was passed, the legislation passed, and we started fall of 2020. And so our courses are in the WECM, that catalog, they're in the WECM now. And of course, some of those business operations courses are in the ACGM. And those are the two catalogs. I'm just kind of assuming that people know what those are, but those are the two catalogs in Texas that the courses with the student learning outcomes are either in one of those two courses, the WECM being more the workforce side of higher education courses and the ACGM being more the traditional courses, like you think of English and math and that. So when the legislation passed, it was passed in a way that only Lone Star College could offer the OLSA degree. So although those courses are in there, we're the only ones that could offer that degree. They wanted us to work out the kinks, that's kind of my way of saying it. I'm sure they had some legislative way of saying it, but they wanted us to work through a lot of different things and kind of make things go smoothly and be able, I think, to coach people on how to we're still a bit of a square peg trying to fit into the round hole that is higher education. Tom Oliverson and Dr. Nutt met about 2 weeks ago, and I know that he is working on the second piece of legislation. So hopefully we'll get introduced and taken to the floor at this upcoming legislation, where that other colleges, universities in the state of Texas could also offer the OLSA degree. The caveat is the kind of like piece that I can tell you, but I can't give you any more information because I don't know what it means. But Tom Oliverson and Dr. Nutt have been talking about, and I don't know who leads that. I don't know if that's Tom Oliverson's idea. I don't know. But he wants the program to be replicated, not just the courses to be taught and then an OLSA degree be given. So if that makes sense, there's a lot of talk about academic freedom in the classes, and I think that's really important in higher education. But they are interested in keeping some continuity and keeping, I guess, the focus, maybe that Candyland analogy that I was using earlier, when you have the courses and you have the learning outcomes, but those soft skills that are embedded into that core curriculum are really the important part that has to be brought out. And I think that's the part they're guarding against, just making it anybody can just offer the courses and call it the OLSA degree. So I know I have a little more time. I wanted to kind of get you the information I was supposed to get you. I could talk about a lot of different pieces. Are there other pieces of that you guys would like me to talk about or answer questions about?
What does OLSA stand for?
Occupational and Life Skills Associate Degree. Well,
Thank you.
without the degree. OLSA.
And how many students are enrolled in that program this last fall and spring?
We tend to have about 85 every semester. I don't have the documents in front of me right now. It hovers between 80 and 90. So about 80 students in each of, so there's 80 students altogether, but those 80 students are in 4 years of courses. So we've got juniors, seniors, sophomores, freshmen within that total.
And you mentioned
So it's a lot of students.
Sorry.
To transition online during a pandemic. I apologize for who was asking.
Yeah, I have a question about the population. You mentioned you were focusing on executive functioning. Do you know how many of those students actually have a diagnosis of intellectual and developmental disability?
Under like the DSM criteria, like a 70 or below 70 criteria?
Correct.
I wouldn't have those exact numbers. We do request the educational evaluations, and so we see those numbers. The IQ, we expect what we tell people is that it's supposed to be 70 or above. And I think what I want to do real quick is, if you don't mind, I want to share just one of those PowerPoint slides, if I can find where the share is on this. Oh, here it is. I stumbled upon it. I don't want to share this whole thing. Can you guys see a PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yes.
It's
So
small.
it is. It's small. Yes, I'm going to try to get to this one and then actually expand it. Is that better? Can you see that a little bit better? Okay.
Yes.
So this is a bell curve that you guys are familiar with, and here's where the 70 is highlighted. We have a baseline criteria of 70 or above. So here is our average, the mean score of the students. When I took this data, it was a year ago. So the mean score was 84. The most frequent, the mode was a 90, and we ranged from 67 to 145. So we do have students below 70. And when I say the baseline criteria is 70, it's not the only piece that we evaluate when we're accepting students. It's to me, it's just a marker to say this is about at the level that we can accommodate a student properly to get through our courses. Some of our courses are hard. Business computer applications is one of the hardest classes I think you could take at a community college, unless it's like anatomy and physiology. It's a pretty tough class. They're learning Excel. They're learning our business programs, and they're creating programs, and so it can be challenging. And that's why I tend to say that our program is for students with executive functioning challenges, because that meets the bulk of our students' diagnosis better, more accurately. But we do have students that fall in the IDD range. I would think it would, off the top of my head, it generally tends to be, when we admit our year of students, about 30 students, 3 or 4 in that year will be at the 67 to 69 range. And so that would probably be about 12 students of the 84 are in that range, just thinking it through logically.
Okay, thank you. And the DSM also uses the levels of support as opposed to the actual diagnostic number now, which I like.
Right.
So I don't know.
I heard that.
Yeah, if you look
wasn't
at
trained that way, but I'd heard that was a good thing that had happened. So
yes. And one final question, is your curriculum on your website or online or something to kind of look, what the program components are?
Yes, let me stop sharing. If you go to lonestar.edu/lifepath, there's a link to courses, and I'm hesitating because they're altering our website. So if you're not finding it today, you'll find it in the next couple of weeks. That link disappeared for a minute. But there's a link to the courses, and all of the courses and the course descriptions are there. And the learning outcomes are also there because it links it to our catalog. So the other way you could go is you could go to the lonestar.edu site and do a search for the catalog and then look for OLSA degree. And you'll have all of the courses for the 4 years.
I'm just so super excited with this legislative process, and the inroads that you've made. This is just awesome news.
It is really exciting. I hate admitting that I had kind of given up because it took 5 years. And so about year 3, I was like, well, that was a nice dream. 20 years from now, they'll do such a thing. And, I'll be very old and go, I wish that would have happened in my time. But it happened, and it was super exciting. I'm very grateful to Tom Oliverson who made that happen. He just was appointed, I don't know if it's an appointment, but he was the legislator who schedules the bills who go to the House floor. So of course his bill got scheduled, and so it was just really exciting. So I think it'll be great. San Jack has contacted us through consultants, and they're curious and interested in replicating. So I don't know what ultimately they decided given the pandemic, because LifePath is not a money earner. So I don't, after about 5 years, it doesn't go terribly negative, but it's never going to earn money. Our ratios are just much lower. So, and it takes a little bit of time to dig out of kind of the negative numbers and be more baseline. So, and I think normally, a program that's going to not lose a lot but not earn that's kind of normal in most colleges, universities. You have those programs, but it's hard to start up a new one during a pandemic, I know.
I have a question. What is the cost to the student and or family for the degree?
So that is exciting. And one day I'm gonna have to go, of course, like, so when I think of the numbers, fall of 2020 is when we started as an accredited program. It's also when our fee structure changed, but it's also when we were in the middle of a pandemic transition, trying to get everybody and keep our new cohort online. So I haven't run the full numbers. However, the exciting thing that happened is we used to be $2,500 a semester, which for community college is a high level of tuition. When we were accredited, the Lone Star College Board of Trustees voted to have us be standard tuition rates. So the standard tuition rate that you pay per credit hour for any Lone Star class, that's what you pay to receive for all the OLSA classes. So I do need to calculate that out.
Okay, so are the students able to receive student loans for the cost of that degree?
That's exciting. That is the one piece that is not completed yet. The request was sent to Department of Education to approve us the OLSA degree for financial aid, and it has not yet gotten the feedback. But from what I've heard, and some of you may understand this better than I do, our courses were built with CIP codes, CIP codes, that are generally financial aid, granted financial aid. So they were set up in a way that looks like they will be approved. So I'm really hoping by fall of 21, we have that piece in place. So
I have a quick question. My name is Jolene Foster, the Coalition of Texans with Disabilities. Just kind of going back to that IQ piece.
yes.
And I know that you said that that's not the only thing that is considered, but does that, what kind of weight does that carry? Because I'm thinking about students with autism who they can take an IQ test and it could be very, very low, but it doesn't indicate they could be very good students and this might be an appropriate placement for them. So I'm just wondering how that balances out.
Yes, we look at from paperwork. So we have paperwork, and we have kind of a rubric that we where we rate different scores. So like if it's a 70 or above, you're getting a 5. It's a 1 through 5 scale. And if it's a 69, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I'm kind of making these up as I go. But so if it's a 69, then that might be a 3, and a 68 might be a, so you get different 1 through 5 scores for each of the pieces of information we gather. And so from the official testing, we gather IQ scores, reading comprehension, math problem solving, and written fluency. We gather those official pieces, and then the students write for us a written essay just in their application. And it's those things, the rubric that we have for those pieces of, I think of them as hard data because I haven't even seen the student yet. Those things allow a student to be invited to an interview with us. And then I feel like the real selection happens during those group admissions interviews. And in those interviews, we're looking for exactly what you said. We may have a student that has a lower than our criteria IQ, but when we put all the pieces together, they met the range of rubric scores that we invite them to the interview. And then we look for really ability to work with us to communicate at a high enough level that we can help teach them the rest of what they need to know to function in our environment and that sort of thing. So we look at more the subjective piece, but we do have specific things that we're looking for during the admissions interviews. I'm not a huge fan of IQ testing for the reasons you just said. I don't like it. My answer to being required, it used to be when we replicated another program, that's basically all. We made our selections based on that IQ. And we've brought in, once we were free of that replication, we brought in all the other pieces so that we could look at a student more holistically. So I hope that answers. We try to look at the student holistically as best we can and meet the mandate that I've been given to have those IQ scores.
Hi there, Ashley Ford with the ARC of Texas. Was wondering if you could speak about what your acceptance rate is currently and about how many applications you're receiving for your program each year.
Yeah, and that it varied. It was very different this last year. Oh my, everything was different this last year. But we have information sessions. So the first step in collecting that hard data is that students need to attend, potential students attend an information session. And part of the reasoning for that is we really want to set that first expectation of self-determination out there. We want to let the student know and the families know that our expectation is that the student would evaluate whether this would be a good fit for them. Now we know they're learning to evaluate such things, but we want to set that as the bar. A lot of students and families opt out. They come to our information sessions and then I'll get an email saying, I know that my son or daughter couldn't handle that, or the son or the actual potential student says, it's really not what I want. I don't want to have to, write compositions. I'm done with that kind of thing. So we have that self-selection piece in place. So it turns out being that we interview, it's about, and I apologize, at my office I have the exact numbers. I don't have the exact ones now, so I'm going from memory. But it's about 75% of the people who apply, we end up interviewing. And of the ones that interview, we accept about 90 to 95% of them. By the time they get to the interviews, we're pretty good at reading through those evaluations, even though I don't love them. We accept most of them. The students that we don't accept, they come to the interviews and are still engaging in those behaviors that really fall outside of a college's student code of conduct. And so almost always that's what it is. The other piece that happens, there's really two reasons we don't, a student, chunking a computer across the room, it doesn't work in the college environment to have those behaviors. They need to get those under control and then apply to us later. But the second thing is that we have students that when we get to the one-on-one piece of the group interview, they say, my mom's making me do this and I don't want to. And so, or my dad, it's not always a mom, sometimes it's the dad and the mom, or grandma, whoever it is. And so if a student doesn't want to be there, then we don't accept them. And students usually happy about that.
And I had another question. I guess I have two questions. One is, are students allowed to take sort of any courses they want or elective courses that maybe don't count towards their associate's degree?
So the way we've set it up is we strongly recommend that they do not during the first 2 years. And then after 2 years, they can receive wraparound support, which is a lot like Texas Tech's CASE program. So they can receive wraparound support, which is actually free at Lone Star College now. If you've been a LifePath student, you can receive wraparound support without any additional cost to you. So you can receive wraparound support, but to be part of that program, to receive wraparound support, you have to meet a criteria in social expectations. And we grade social expectations on a rubric, things like professionalism, communication, leadership and collaboration, attending, not meaning showing up, but focus, ability to come back to, we rate those and they have to be meeting it's a 1 to 5 scale and they have to be at a 3 in some of those critical social expectations to receive the wraparound support. So I say that's the way it generally is set up to work. After 2 years, then they can begin to take those other courses or step completely out of LifePath and receive wraparound support. We do allow students to petition to do that early. And that's, a lot of times it's just, those are students that they come in with just a high level of ability, and they have managed the things that we typically are teaching students to manage. They're managing their time, they're managing their communication, and they're managing it. And so they maybe just needed a little confidence boost. So a lot of times those students are the ones that step out earlier because they've met our criteria earlier.
And then,
Hey, I think we have
my other
time for,
question-
wait. I think we have time for like 2 more questions, and then we need to move on the agenda. So go ahead. Tracy, you want to go next? Or I guess, Ashley, you want to finish your question, and then Tracy.
I think this should be a quick question. If there's an age limit or a prescribed age range that the students have to fall into?
They need to be 18 or older and have completed their high school experience, whatever that means to the individual student. We don't have a top cap. I think our oldest student that's applied so far was 31. So I don't anticipate, a 65-year-old applying, but if they, we wouldn't turn them away if they did. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is Tracy Glass with the PATHS program at Texas A&M.
Hi.
Back to funding, I was curious, like the majority of our students are funded through the Texas Workforce Commission. Do you work with them at all to provide funding for your students for your program?
Yeah, about 40% of our students are funded by TWC, about 40%. So it's a good healthy number. Yeah, and I can say that before we were accredited, I felt like there was a lot of taking care of that TWC relationship. Tons of our energy, was filtered into making things clear. And at this point, once the OLSA came to be, was like we were accredited, things have gotten so much more simple. So that's been nice. We're really grateful for TWC and all the support they give our students.
Yeah, they're a great partner. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ann, and you're welcome to stay on, or if you're too busy to stay with us, you're welcome to buzz off. But I was going to say, I'd like to call on Waylon at this time. One of the things I was curious about, and I figured the group would be too, is because the legislators are in town and supposedly working, I'd like to know what kind of legislation was maybe pending with them that might affect higher ed for special needs students. So Waylon, do you have some updates from the higher ed coordinating board about that?
Hey, Deanne. Yeah. So I will say session has been a little bit slower this year. I could imagine there's several things as far as putting more priorities at the top of the list. But for me, that I have been directly in contact with, or that is related to intellectual and developmental disability, I had two bills that were introduced. And one of those were HB 855 by Representative Mary Gonzalez. And this one was pretty much require a study to be conducted with us. I say us, the coordinating board and TEA, to conduct a joint study for the transitions to higher education for public schools, students with disabilities. And in a nutshell, I guess is more where they will report on the graduation and higher education enrollment rates for students with disabilities, and then investigate whether appropriate accommodations are accessible to students in K-12 and at institutions of higher education. One of the good things that I did notice about that, we did some of this work with our report, and we have some of those, I believe, surface level data when we reported and got some of that information when you all did the report. But I think this one is going to be a little bit more in depth in what they're asking or requesting for that one. And then the other one is Senate Bill 54. And this one was introduced by Senator Judith Zaffirini. And she typically does several of those and looks out for this specific population. So we're always appreciative of that. And this one was to conduct another study on best practices for assisting students with ASD, autism spectrum disorder. And that one was more to track the completion data at the secondary and higher education levels, and just pretty much identify the best practices, even the best programs and models and resources to support these students through their transition and at these specific institutions. So I know we touched a little bit on some of that with our studies as well, but this one would be highlighted and specifically focused on students with autism. So those are the two that has been introduced thus far that I have been associated with and will be following. And as if I get more, or I'm sure I'll be sharing and giving you all updates as they go. And hopefully some of these get passed.
And one of the things I'd mentioned to Waylon is that I was real interested in the second one. If they're asking for volunteers to kind of work on something like that. So if any of the rest of you are as well, you might want to shoot Waylon an email. And I'd like to suggest too, Waylon, DJ has been such a great part of our work as far as his input and attendance. I'm sorry to say that my two students from the CASE program have had so many issues going on that they've not been as attentive as I'd hoped they'd be. But I do think that having individuals with autism on any kind of committee that's going to study this area would be really important. Actually, either one of those programs or either one of those studies. I just think it's important to have consumers be a part of those, part of that input, especially if they've had experience in college and can talk to what's worked for them. I think that's real critical. And DJ, thank you. Thumbs up. You've done a great job helping us out.
Most certainly. Yes, Deanne, I'll definitely take that in consideration. And as I provide any feedback, I'll definitely try to include that information because it's not, we don't always know who would be responsible and who would get the charge to carry out this specific bill. Me being at the coordinating board, I probably have some type of affiliation with that. However, it may not be upon myself to conduct this study. It may be hiring an external consultant or individual to carry out this study. But as I get more information, depending on how the bill is passed and what those requirements may look like, I'll definitely be sharing that information. Who knows, it may come to us in the advisory council and we have to pick this up. So a lot of things playing as a factor for that.
Yeah, and I think if they go with someone outside, that's fine. I'd like to see that this group, if they have names of people that they'd like to put forward, that we make some suggestions so that it ends up being someone who really is familiar with the field and actively engaged in the field, as opposed to.
Most certainly.
There's a lot of
definitely be well represented.
Well, I just want to say that there's a lot of quote experts, but they haven't really touched the lives of some of these individuals in a long time. So I want to make sure these were current people and not, I hate to insult anyone that may be on the call, but it's not just a researcher. It's someone who's actually been involved in not just the research, but also working with individuals on the spectrum.
Right. Most certainly. I definitely take that in consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for that update. Any other updates as far as the legislature or potential agenda items you'd like to see come up? I really enjoyed listening to Ann. We've been trying to get them on since last year when the pandemic hit, just because I was excited about the legislation and how that all kind of worked for them. So, you know, I'd be glad to entertain other suggested programs. I know that Texas has gotten a couple of new TIPSIT grants from the Think College movement. I think North Texas and Texas A&M San Antonio both got TIPSIT grants. Were there any others? I don't think so. The other thing is, and Jennifer, you may want to speak to it today, or you may want to save it to another time, is there's been openings with an RFP through TWC to provide funding for post-secondary programs. And would you like to give an update on that for just a moment?
I don't know if I have an update, but that there is an RFP that is pretty broad in nature and is about any provider, any person, any university setting who wants to put forth a proposal of, a training being vocationally oriented or life skill oriented, or it is pretty broad that they want to provide our students and our customers. It's out there now.
And I believe a number of the programs we've talked about in our report, there we go, are applying for that. So that's kind of exciting. So things are growing. And Linda, would you like to speak to what you found and shared with us about Arlington Baptist College? I grew up Baptist, and I even lived in the DFW area for 10 years, and I never heard of Arlington Baptist University. So, I saw on, I think it was my Facebook, them putting something out, and then you sent us all an email. So would you like to share about that, what you know?
Yes, I went to most of the meeting and then I had to lead a meeting, so I had to leave. It is a program that right now has 8 students. They live away from home together in apartments, and they do food prep together at the noon hour. They go to courses in the morning and the afternoon. They originated through a church named Green Oaks. So it's private, it's a Bible study part of it too. I left before I heard the tuition and what degree is offered. But it's a 3-year program, and they go into training in either hospitality and culinary or horticulture. And they're next opening up childcare, animal care, and office skills. They have a grant from the Amon Carter Foundation to create a teaching kitchen. And that's about all I know, but I have the contact information. And so if this group would ever like a presentation, they could do that. Do we cover private schools and what they have, or just public schools in our group?
I would think any group in Texas would be something we needed to mention. So if you'll send all that contact information to me, I'd like to add that and any others we note to the list that we created for the report. And that way we have a current list of some.
Okay. I apologize for not attending the whole program.
Oh, no. Thank you for taking that on.
Sure.
Deanne,
yes,
if I may. Yeah, so that was a good point, and I think that's a good segue, because I received an email with about 6 programs that were that I was notified that was not like advertised or publicized on the coordinating board website, and one of those was the Arlington Baptist University program. That is Green Oaks Life Prep was the program itself. And there's a couple more. Some of those were, I think 2 of the 6 that was proposed in that email were included in our main report, but a couple others were not, or had a different name. So it could have been a name change of a specific program, or it could have been another program at that specific institution. I'll definitely share that with you all, but I think it's a good opportunity for us to kind of discuss how do we think we want to move forward as far as kind of like continuously gathering information from these institutions about the programs that they have, because I mean, you all are aware that we kind of do it on an annual basis at the coordinating board, as far as when we do our survey and recruitment, the inventory, where we kind of allow the institutions to report back. And they don't always report back or give us the most up-to-date information. So there may be something we want to continue to explore as a council to kind of continuously check in and reaching out to these institutions to gather that data and making sure it's up to date. And that way, and then we can post it and maybe have a dedicated page or site with this updated information at the coordinating board, in addition to, you know, like our report or certain information that educational material that's beneficial for this for these students or population. So this is a good time for us to discuss and what we may think that may look like. If we want to do it as a council, do we want to create a certain work group? Because in addition to our requirements as an advisory council, is to create educational materials and making sure we publicize this information or getting this information out as well. So I'm happy to discuss it further, see what ideas or what you all may think. And I know we had some of these recommendations and we had previous conversations on what this may look like, but I think this is a good year because we don't have to submit a more formal, in-depth report this year. This would be a perfect opportunity to kind of look at some of those things.
I would certainly, go ahead, Linda, I'm sorry.
I think there should be a standard list of information required. This one is limited to ID only. Others are that we've heard about are only limited to autism. So that needs to be on every college that's listed. I guess parents would also want to know about tuition and so forth. So that what they send, we don't want it to be so spotted that it's not the same for each college you're looking at.
Right. And I think and I hope Jennifer's not angry with me for doing this, but I did share a document that she had shared with me that kind of went through some of that information on some of the programs that we've talked about. So I think, you know, I'm not as concerned about the tuition rate because I know that can change, but I would like to be able to have an ongoing list, at least of the websites and the name of the institution and the population served, that kind of thing, to know for sure. So I know Nina, are you still on? Yes, you're on. She had brought up a question and email to us about the E4 program. So would you like to bring that forward and maybe we can discuss that for a minute? Because it may come up with some other groups as well.
Sure. I just noticed a correction needed to be made. It just listed direct support professional as an outcome. And we actually use the term personal care attendant. And then we also have certification in childcare and the highly qualified paraprofessional through the Education Service Center. So I just wanted to add those outcomes and certifications that were available for our students. And that raises the question of ensuring if we're distributing this, is everything accurate? Are all the programs and information accurately distributed, represented? And I'm not sure where this chart's going to go or if it's already been shared.
Not really, I don't think, unless Jennifer shared it. I think I just shared it with the group because I thought it was a nice grid to look at as to how you could break some programs up and help parents kind of discern what programs might be most appropriate for their student to apply for. And those are state certifications, correct, Nina?
They're not state certifications. The highly qualified paraprofessional would be a certification that's through the Education Service Center. The other is certificates of completion. We do partner with one of the UT Child Care Center that has a program that it uses for its child associate license. So they get some certificates of completion, but they don't meet all of those specific requirements, you know, from that larger organization, but they do complete the modules for a lot of them in those areas.
Yeah. Okay, and I think for me, that's a difference. I know the Transition Academy, they get a certification of completion, but it's not a state recognized program. And so again, I don't know if we need to make that discernment in our notations so that people know that it's a state certificate that they can go and apply for a job showing that they have an official state certificate, or if it needs to be noted that it's a certificate of completion. I don't know, Jennifer, did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, I just want to clarify, I don't mind you sharing that document, but I do want to clarify that it's not an indefinite list. For our counselors that we work with in vocational rehabilitation, and I just wanted to put something together to delineate which ones we are currently supporting, and also future ones. It's not a favoritism. It's not I pick these things out. It's just and also explain why we're supporting them. And so there's a little bit list, because there's so many programs, which is amazing and great, but they are a spectrum now. And our counselors are having a hard time differentiating which would be appropriate for which customer and why, and what services they give out. And so that's why I just put that together as a tool really for our staff, really for internally, but there's no reason, it can't be shared. But I just want to make it clear that it's not an exhaustive list by any means.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any other things that Waylon or anybody else on the committee wants to share before I go to announcements?
Yeah, Deanna, I think we just need a little bit more clarification how we want to move forward throughout this year as a council, and just kind of get a little bit more organized in that sense. As far as I think when I look at our goals or objectives for this year, it's kind of taking a step back and saying, okay, we just submitted our report, which was the immediate priority. And so there's a couple things how we can move forward. And one is build upon that report because we don't have the immediate time frame to submit until next year. So it's kind of like start building off of those suggestions that we might have made that wasn't a formal recommendation, or if we want to fine tune any of those recommendations and align it to a certain bill or language in a bill, like to have it more in sync and taking an in-depth look at some of those things to make it more intentional in what we're trying to do. I think that's an area of opportunity. I definitely think a priority should be around the marketing and outreach and how we display information and making sure it's accessible for our students in the state. And then the other piece is the programs and just collecting that, and that can kind of feed into the marketing, but at the same time, just understanding all the programs we have across the state. So I think on the surface, that's where I'm thinking our work or focus should be as we kind of just play out the rest of this year. And even though we don't have a full report that's due this year, we still have to submit an annual report based on the activities that we've done, which is our meetings. And also it's an opportunity to provide any recommendations or necessary rule changes and things like that we may come across. So that can just be a short summary of what we found or any recommendations at that point. So other than that, I think we need to talk about that, and then we can talk about the meetings for the remainder of the year, just have some tentative dates in place.
Okay.
So,
I definitely think one of our priorities needs to be, as we've kind of already discussed, a list of current programs. I think getting that information out so that it's other places besides just the higher ed coordinating board. Perhaps the service centers would be willing to put that on their websites, because I know that's where school districts go to look for trainings and things like that. I'd like to see the parent organizations statewide have access to that information so that they're sharing that with parents and families and other caregivers. Other thoughts? Those are the two things that jump out at me at this point.
Deanne, this is Beth Stalvey. Waylon, I appreciate your suggestions for maybe going through the report and seeing if there are some recommendations that could be addressed in this next year. There were certainly several recommendations that included data points or further data review and analysis or exploration of certain services and things like that. So I wonder if we could more easily commit to those in the next year. And I know that there were several items that we wanted to look into on our list for this year. So just kind of going through those and seeing what is possible. One of those recommendations was a little bit more structural in terms of whether or not any of the work of this group could be included more formally in some of the 60 by 30 goals. That would be more of a question for the agency. So I do think that there were several on that list that we might be able to look into for this year. Obviously, I don't have access to that data, so it would be hard to say how involved that would be or what the process would be.
Yeah, good. Thanks for bringing that back up, Beth. And that was actually under my announcements, and I included it in our minutes because it was a strong, what I want to say, just something of interest for us as a council to understand how this all fits in and align with the overall state strategic plan. So if I don't know if you all recently watched our board meeting, the commissioner addressed there's a revision or revised 60 by 30 plan that is undertaking. And so with that, as soon as we get that finalized, I'm sure we'll be able to have someone to present and kind of talk more about that. But right now it's undergoing that process. So they're having 9 virtual listening session or tours across the state right now to engage with community colleges and universities and other community stakeholders and employers, which I think would be a perfect opportunity for you all to kind of sit in and seeing what those initiatives may be, but also voice your concerns or interest as far as how does this play out and how can we be included with this process. He's right now has a set, or the agency has a set of like 4 what I want to say categories in a sense, and those kind of go off of extending the age group from beyond the 25 to 34, but kind of removing that age limit that was previously there to focus on just the young adults. So now they're opening that up. That's one of the items. Another one was more focused on like research and technology and the commercialization of that. Another was providing an opportunity, or all Texans the opportunity to access of higher education and resources that are available for them. And I think that's that main category, to try to understand how do we fit in within that specific sector or item. Trying to think what else.
Waylon, could you send us whatever information you have about the meeting time so that maybe some of us can kind of sit in on those? I'd be interested in doing that.
Can I ask a process question? Is it which is more appropriate, or all of the above? Should this group be participating in these public meetings and making our recommendations in that forum? Or because we are an established advisory group, are we making recommendations as an extension of the Higher Education Coordinating Board? So for example, should we as council members be making some of those recommendations? Should we share this report with all of our programs and encourage them to participate in these listening sessions? What do you recommend?
Well, that's a good point.
Yeah, I'm open either way as far as what the council decides as a whole, as far as how you address or submit your requests or recommendations on how IDD fits within this plan. So that may be an item for us to discuss as a whole and submit something, maybe even in writing or something along those lines, saying this is our interest, or if you have any questions those type of things. Or if you all want to take it individually and sit in on these sessions, or voice your concerns or recommendations at that, that's fine as well. So I'm here to support you all in whatever decision that you all make as far as you feel like most appropriate.
Well, last thing I'll say, I mean, I work for a council, and we are made up of a group of individuals, just as we all are here. And so I could definitely see a distinction between a statement that our council may make in terms of a recommendation, and then the recommendations we might make from our respective organizations. And so I appreciate that. I just would like to kind of decide what the strategy is. And I don't know, if I were an agency and I knew that an advisory group existed, and yet I didn't hear from the group, I only saw all of those members in my public forums, you know, I just wanted to I just want to be respectful of our role as a council.
Yep,
Right.
absolutely.
That's good.
Great point.
Well, how soon are these meetings going on now, or will they be starting up?
Yeah, they've already started for January, and they're going through February. And then there's going to be a process between now through July where there should be like 2 public forums or meetings. Like, so when I get those dates, I can share those, or any additional information, I'll be sure to share that with the council. But in the meantime, I think it's important, if you all are going to be working together, it may be something that needs to start happening to understand how do you all want to address it. So because if we're meeting every 3 months, that means you're not going to have much time. So it definitely needs to be happening, you know, in between our meetings.
So I guess my question is, I know we turned in a report. Is the group that's meeting, is that something they've read, or do we need to glean some key points to send in? I mean, I agree with Beth. I think it would be great for us to submit something as a council. So I guess my question is, do we want to have a summary or a cover letter and send that with the report? And maybe we'll go ahead and update the list of programs from the ones we've been given now. What do y'all think?
I would support a letter from the council that highlights the report. And then I might also recommend talking points and a copy of the report that we could send to all of the programs in our state that are on our list, as well as all of the folks that we all know, and encourage them to make those same points. And if for the entire month of February, every session that this group goes to, they hear IDD in the comments, then maybe it will get through.
Okay. All right, so I guess what I want to do, I see a couple of things. First of all, a cover letter that would go to the people that are running these forums, I guess is what I heard, right, Beth? Or a summary of the report to them or something like that. And then the second one would be a letter that goes out to all our prospective partners or contacts and the institutions which we've highlighted. So I would like to have volunteers, unless someone else has another structure in mind, people who would be willing to work on those 2 things with me. I mean, I see hands going up. Okay, Ashley and Linda, and Beth, yay, okay. I would really like some help doing the letter to the higher ed coordinating board, because I want to make sure it sounds official and we summarize and say what we want to say. So could I have 1 or 2 people who want to do that? And then I'm going to assign the other group to work on the program piece. So Waylon, if you'll take this down for me so I know. All right, the ones who want to do the higher coordinating board first. Okay, I've got Nina, Beth, and Linda. Okay, and myself. Oh, and Ashley. Okay. Now, then I need another group, and I can help you too, work up a letter that's going to go out to the programs. And I'd hope that some of the program subcommittee might want to do this, because you guys did a lot of work on this. So do I have a few volunteers to do that? Beth and Linda and Christine and Sue. Did I get everybody that raised their hand? Okay, great. Okay, so I think that's two ways we could get that handled. And I would say this is the last week in January, so this has got to happen pretty fast. If people want to, I don't know if this is a good time for people to pull up their calendars because we need to set meeting dates, but also set some dates for us to discuss how we want to move forward and get this completed pretty quickly because time is of
Waylon,
the
could I clarify, Waylon, is the chair of this council allowed to send a letter or some talking points out as the chair, or does that need to be vetted through the higher education coordinating board before that correspondence would be sent?
I would say it needs to at least be vetted before it gets sent out, just so we're all on the same page.
Okay.
How long does that take?
Yeah.
I don't know about that one now, Beth. But it shouldn't take long. It shouldn't take long. Right.
Well, and even if that doesn't get out in a timely manner, I think the information in the report itself to out to our constituents and to the higher ed entities that we've talked about, I think even that information would be very helpful. So
my only thought, Waylon, my only thought is whether or not if we were going to send a letter out to respective programs or other partners that we have, if, for example, we send it out as TCDD or a member of the advisory, we wanted to let you know about this report and these opportunities for public comment, as opposed to on behalf of the council, we're asking you to participate in these meetings. And so I'm just wondering if there's a distinction or whether we should plan to kind of send it out to all of our networks as ourselves, and then maybe mention that we're members of this council. I don't know if you have a recommendation for that.
That might expedite things.
Yeah, I'm open either way.
We may still have to get review. So I guess I just want to be respectful, Waylon. I don't want to do anything that would make anyone nervous.
No, I think the safe thing is to come up with our suggestions, our talking points, and let's review them as a council. Send them to me. I can review them. If everything looks fine, we'll put it out. And those things that if you feel like it's just maybe borderline or just extreme in a case or something, we'll just have an honest and transparent discussion of what that may looks like and what that really may present. And then if we can't say like, okay, the coordinating board is standing behind this for whatever reason, it may provide an opportunity for you as an individual or your organization, if that's something you all want to stand behind in absence of the advisory council, you're more than welcome to do that. But nothing you all have presented or shared with me shows that there's any type of conflict or anything to that nature to say that we would reserve or restrict that from being said or done. So I don't see that.
I promise this is the last thing I'm going to say. The 4 goals that you just mentioned that folks are requesting public comment on, is that part of the materials when they announce the input sessions, or is that something that we could get a copy of?
Yeah, I should be able to share those 4 items. Because that's already been shared. You can actually go to our recent board meeting and you can see the presentation and hear the discussion from that as well. So, and I can share that link if you all need it.
Okay, so if people can pull up their calendars real quick, and as far as putting something together for the higher ed coordinating board for us to send as a council, I'd like to suggest we meet. My calendar looks like Wednesday the 3rd is going to be the first date that I have available. I don't know how that looks for everybody else, and I'm open all day. So,
and Deanne, to clarify, this is a work group and not a. Okay, all right.
Yeah, this would be a work group to work on getting something together to send to the coordinating board for their meetings, the input and stuff. How does everybody else's calendar who volunteered?
I'm good for the 3rd as well.
I'm good for the 3rd as well. This is Christine.
Okay, so you want to do mornings or afternoons?
1 o'clock.
1's good. Okay, let me put that on.
That works for me too.
Okay. Let's see. I'll put it on here now. It will never get done. Okay, I'm going to put down, I'm going to reserve 1 to 3. I don't know that we'll need all that time, but I think to just get us started and then divide up whatever needs to be done. Because I think a cover letter, I would hope, would be fairly simple. But if we're going to highlight what we want them to look at or what our recommendations are based on our report, if y'all could read over those and kind of highlight the ones you're most interested in or you think would be most important, I think that would help. So let's see. Don't see where, okay, so add guests. Let me put this on my calendar and then I'll see if I can't send it out to everybody that's going to be on the group. But I'm going to need your notes, Waylon, because I'm not taking notes. I'm just trying to facilitate and listen. Okay, now the other group that's going to develop something to go out, bless you, Ashley, that needs to go out to our constituents and the other programs. Waylon, you're going to be checking on what we need to do or what's the most appropriate professional way to handle this. Could you possibly meet with us on the 3rd at like 3:30 or 3 o'clock? I just don't want to let things go by too long.
Let's see. I think I have a 3. Yeah, I actually have a 3 o'clock. So I won't be able to meet at 3.
Okay.
Let's see.
You want to try to meet that morning, like around 11?
On the 3rd or the next day?
The 3rd. 11, 11:30, anything like that?
No, I have at 11 o'clock. I can meet at 10 o'clock.
Okay. Would 10 o'clock work for the people who want to talk about that? This would be to find out if we're going to send this out as a council or if it needs to come from individual constituents that are on this council.
Deanne, could I ask if we could combine these two groups?
That's fine.
Just do the 2 letters, or do you feel like it needs some distinction?
I don't care because I'm going to have to work on both. So it's fine with me. It makes my life easier.
I think that may be good, Beth, just so everybody's included on the conversations and understand those talking points as, as a group. So I think
Okay,
that's a good point. And then from there, if additional work or information is needed, they'll have those separate work groups and y'all come back together and discuss those.
Yeah, and I don't want to make this real time consuming and tedious, but I would like to not be the sole lead on drafting these letters. I really would like people with more experience doing these types of communications to be a part of this. So let's put down February the 3rd at 1 o'clock. Waylon, can you do that?
Yes.
Okay, and we'll hear from Waylon about where we're going to proceed from there. And then we'll also work on the letter with recommendations. So please look over the report. If you need a new one sent to you, let us know, and be prepared to kind of put what you think your priorities are from the recommendations. Does that make sense to everybody?
And
Okay.
may I ask for Waylon to include that link to the recording and the documents that outlines those areas when you're sending out that email?
Most certainly.
Yeah,
I'll send it out.
Right. Okay. So we'll look forward to getting something from Waylon. We'll review the report and we'll meet back on the 3rd for those people who are available and are interested in doing this part. So Waylon, you want to talk to us about when we need to meet, so we're meeting our quarterly requirements?
Yeah, so let's see what I have here.
I think you may have said April.
I got a lot of documents up. 1 second. Yeah, I said probably April. Well, for us, I just want us to all be aware that like our board meetings are for the rest of the year are scheduled for April, July, and October around the 20th of each month or 21st, 20th. And if we have something that needs to be submitted by the end of the year, we typically like to have it in, a couple months in advance. However,
Right.
this year, when we submit our activities report, it's up to the board as when that deadline occurs. So I think if we have it in, and because it's just an activities report with minimum recommendations, that can be done at any time. But if we're going to do it before the October's board meeting, we need to have that completed by by the end of August for sure. So just thinking about that. If we have another meeting in April and another in July, that give us only 2 meetings, but of course we can have them at any time between that, and I think it's very doable. But if per se we don't have anything ready at that time, I think long as we submit it to the board, it'll just have to go through the January board meeting for the following year. So because it's just an activities report, I think we'll be good either way. But so with that, I would say like as far as now, probably like the end of March, end of April, kind of like the same, the 28th, 29th, that Friday. I don't know, let me look at
That's the 30th.
Yeah, so it'll be like the 30th, same time, then July 30th. If y'all want to keep it on a Friday at the end of the month, we can do that. And then have another October 29th, or if y'all want to wait, either way.
Okay, so the 30th, and you said August or before August?
October.
No, July. No,
July,
so it's
sorry.
April 30th, and then July 30th, and then October 29th could be our tentative hold dates, and we can adjust as we have our next meeting or see something that needs to be moved. But I think that kind of sets us up as far as meeting our requirement as meeting quarterly.
Okay.
And for this cycle is it's like August, September to August is what we'll be reporting on for the year, because we've already met in October. So we will fulfill our requirements by having this one and the one in April and July.
Okay. So if you'll put that with all the other information you're sending all of us, Waylon, I don't know what I'd do without you. And we can send that forward, and then we will catch up on the 3rd.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the only thing there's still this gap as far as the work that we're doing outside of the immediate work with the 60 by 30 plan. So do we want to keep our same work groups and everybody kind of pick up on that additional work in a sense, as far as like continuously working with those programs and getting that updated, even though I know, you're about to submit, a letter to these programs or your network. Do we want the policy group to continue looking and reviewing the recommendations that we submitted? Those type of things. Do we want to create another work group for the marketing and outreach, or is that something we just want to discuss when we reconvene at our next meetings? Those sort of things. Because once we get this done on February 3rd, you kind of be idle between then, mid-February to our next meeting, unless, we pick up some additional conversations through email work groups. So I just want everybody to be on the same page and workflow.
I'm thinking if you could send out what we've already asked for, and any information on the 360 by 30, whatever that name is. Perhaps we could address that through email unless someone else has another suggestion. I just think that for me, I need to finish one thing before we move to another big thing. And I think we've got two pretty big things to take care of once we get permission to do those things. So I don't know how everybody else feels.
No, that works. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page as we go forward and nothing's being dropped. So
Okay.
we'll focus on the immediate 60 by 30 response and how we submit that. And then from there, we'll pick up additional conversations how we move forward.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
All right. Any other? I did want to make an explanation. There is a notation on the forms that I shared from Jennifer about the different programs. There's a thing on there called Campus Connections, and I wanted to explain a little bit about that because I've not shared that with the group as a whole, I don't believe. Coming out of my semi-retirement, I've been contacted by a group called Bloom Consulting that does a lot of work through TWC and various entities with students with disability across the board. And one of the things they had gotten information, or I guess queries from families, is if you wanted something similar to what the CASE program does at Texas Tech, but you didn't want to go to Lubbock, what could you do? And so I've definitely shared our report with Bloom Consulting so they can share that with families so they see where the other programs are. But in the meantime, we are drafting and working on trying to get a contract with TWC to start doing a CASE program that would not be necessarily housed at only one entity, but would be available face-to-face in the Austin area or Houston area where they have offices, and would be available statewide or even nationwide to students who are willing to get that kind of support virtually. So I'm doing the wraparound training with the staff. We are starting to talk to families now and interview, getting ready to start, hopefully in the next month or so, interview a couple of potential students. We've had a number of people ask questions. So in other words, if you were going, and we don't want to step on anybody's toes. So if there's already a program there, we're going to recommend that program and have them look at that program first, because we don't want to duplicate effort from the list of ones that we know are available. We also don't want to have a wait list. So we're trying to make references for folks to go to other programs if there's something available for them. But we are going to be working with students who maybe, let's say they're going to Tarrant County Community College, or they're going to Stephen F. Austin, and they need support, but there's not a specific program there. I know that what I found as part of my charge of running the CASE program when I was under the TCDD grant program to start that program, I visited so many universities, my head began to spin. And I kept getting the same answers. We don't have staff and we don't have money. And so I've seen people put together programs that had neither, and they relied on a doctoral student or a graduate student, but there's not a lot of continuity when that happens. I've seen it also, and Christine and other people can attest to this, where it's been an add-on to what else you do. And that makes it very cumbersome. So what we're wanting to do is train staff from Bloom to go in and work with universities. It would cost the universities nothing. It would not require them to hire additional staff, but it would provide those supports through Bloom Consulting that will have been trained on the Berkman as well as on wraparound, so that they could do those programs, and it would be paid for privately by the family or by a contract, hopefully with TWC. So I wanted to put that out there so you would know, and we're wanting to help students that are, regardless of what kind of program they're in, whether they're in a four-year university or a community college, or, you know, even if it's an accreditation program through something else, but they need that level of support, that we would be available to help them with that. So that said, I will also send out a flyer that gives you a little bit of information with the website so that you can share that with people. I'm not making any money off this deal. I'm just trying to get supports to families and students that need the support, and hopefully provide additional training. And probably at some later date, I'd like to have kind of more of a statewide training on maybe how we do this and other communities that want to come forward. The think tank was real helpful, but I'd like it to be a more in-depth. People bring a team of folks and get trained in RAP or some explanations about using the Berkman, because those things have been the two most successful things we've had. So given that, any questions? Linda.
Hi. If a college receives any federal funds, they have to offer student support. So why is this different? Does it pass a line of what typical student support is?
Yes, it's very much individualized and much more intensive. And we usually work with have you gone through student disability services? What are things that you couldn't get through them because they're limited on what their scope is? They do a great job for the most part, but they're limited on what they can do. So if that's not meeting your needs, then this would not be under the free and appropriate kinds of programs that colleges provide. It would be additional to that. And at this point, we're looking at charging $1,000 a month, which is even cheaper than what Case was charging. So that's the difference. They would have individual plans and things like that. So, but we want to coordinate it with the campus that they're on so that we're utilizing those campus and community supports of where they go to college, and not just, bringing in all other kinds of things. But the main thing is to help coordinate and help the student be aware of what's already available, and then identifying goals and resources that they need in addition to that. So,
thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Just have a quick question. How is it different from the college living experience? I do recall that one was super expensive, and I don't know all the details from it, but.
Well, number one, we're not going to require you to live in a certain apartment, and we're not going to have psychologists and psychiatrists and all other kinds of folks on staff, which is why it's so much cheaper, because they work more towards living, independent living, which we'll touch on, but obviously we're not going to go into the dorms or into their apartments or that kind of thing. That ours is more focused on executive functioning, job preparation, social skills, those kinds of things. And then we want to work in tandem with student disability services, because that's who provide letters of accommodations, and we want them to get those academic supports from student disability services, because we're not trying to take their jobs. We're just wanting to add or supplement to them when a student needs more than just their hour or two a week or whatever it is they have. So I hope that kind of helps. It also provides the opportunity for a student to go to any college in the state. So it's not just limited to what's in Central Texas, because that's where community living experience is.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Any other announcements? People have stuff going on. Anybody get their COVID shots yet? I'm on every list I can find, but no luck so far. Okay. DJ, are you staying healthy?
Yes.
Good. So are you remote, or are you back on campus yet?
Well, some of my classes are face-to-face. My government class, I meet twice a week. My chemistry class is a hybrid class. And also my photography class is online.
Okay. Okay. Well, you stay safe out there. And everybody else as well. And DJ, I just want to thank you again, because seeing you on camera and listening to you when you speak makes me keep a focus on what we're doing this for. And it's just so important that you participate. And I know it takes extra time. And Leanne, thank you for bringing him to us. He's a breath of fresh air, and he keeps us focused just by listening and watching, because I notice when he nods and when he looks like, I don't know about that. So thank you both for that. All right. Anything else, Wayland? Otherwise, I'm going to dismiss everybody. Okay.
Oh, that's all I have. Happy New Year and good to see everyone, and keep up the good work
Yes.
you all are doing. Thank you. This
Yes,
was a good
and
conversation.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, Deanne.
Sure, and we'll talk to anybody who wants to be on the call on Wednesday. And Waylon, you can help me set up a Zoom call for that.
Yep.
Okay, sounds good, guys. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. You guys.
Thank you.
Take
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.